listeners and viewers of the Real Stuff podcast. Today is Wednesday, and we have a special guest, the Reverend Peter Espeut, and he'll be talking about constitutional reform. And with us also is Flavius, our co-host. So back to you, Flavius.
Yes, Reverend. Could you just give our listeners just a quick thing about yourself, and then we can move ahead.
Oh my. Well, I am a Jamaican, and I guess I'm over 70 years old. So I say that to say that I was born before independence, and was born under the pre-independence Constitution of Jamaica, and then came under the Independence Constitutional, which is still the constitution that governs Jamaica at the moment. I'm introduced as Reverend. I'm a Roman Catholic deacon. I'm also a sociologist and scientist. And I wonder if I need any more than that for an introduction.
No, man, that should be fine. That should be fine. Wonderful. But
Yeah,
I want to ask a question. First up, do you think that what we are doing now, saying that we are, constitutional reform and all that stuff, I'm of the view that this should have been done from 1960 to 61.
Well, in 1960-61, they did do a new constitution. Jamaica's independence constitution was created at that time. What you're saying is that it was not done well at that time, and you would be right.
No, it wasn't. It was based off the British system. We didn't have, I don't think, much input into it.
Well, you're right, and I was going to start there in my planning for how I would address the issue with you all today.
Go ahead.
Because what happened 60 odd years ago was that Mandy and Bustamante went to England, and a couple of other people on both sides, and they had private meetings with British officials, and they came to an agreement on what our constitution would be. And then that's our constitution today. But as you're quite correctly pointing out, Jamaicans, by and large, had no input into it. We would have to say that the constitution that we now operate under was not developed democratically. Democracy, as you know, is ruled by the people, of the people, and for the people. But this constitution was not developed by the people. It was developed by PNP and JLP politicians. And I fear, brethren and sisters out there, that this one that we are talking about now, this process is going to go the same way. Because they've gone and selected a small committee, mostly of lawyers. I don't mind that so much, but the fact is that the committee meets in secret, and they claim to have come to consensus on all sorts of things. But how can a small group of the two parties come together and have consensus without the people agreement? That is not consensus. And the Minister of Legal Reform says that she wants to table the bill next month in the Parliament. And there's been no consultation with anybody. In my notes here that I write to myself, the first point I have is that even before we discuss what sort of constitution we want for Jamaica, we need to discuss the process by which we are going to come to that new constitution. And when they say consensus, what does consensus mean? consensus is supposed to mean that there is general agreement. But when the PNP and the JLP say consensus, they mean that the two of them agree. But the two of them agreeing can be consensus between them, but it is not consensus with the Jamaican people. And I think the vast majority of Jamaicans are not going to support any new constitution that is not taken to the people with a series of public meetings. Nowadays, we're calling them town hall meetings, copying over there. But they're not town hall. But anyway, that's what they call them. We follow fashion bad, you see.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And but there apparently is very little plan for that. And then they say they're going to have consultation. But what does consultation mean? They've had 6 meetings so far, all in secret. Not one public meeting, not one public forum, not one, no group has been invited to give any testimony in front of any committee to say, we think this, we think that. But they say they've developed consensus. So we apparently are of no use in this process. Again, you see, I have always contended that a lot of the war that we fight for civil liberties in Jamaica has to do with words, the meaning of words. And there are 3 words here that clearly we are not agreeing on. One is, what does consultation mean? Another one is, what does consensus mean? And the third one is, what does democracy mean? Because it seems to me that this new constitution is going to be enacted by the politicians, not by the people. And therefore, it's not government by the people, of the people, and for the people. It's government by politicians, of the politicians, and by the politicians.
Yeah, could I just ask one question before we move on?
Yeah, man. You can interrupt me anytime.
Yeah.
I chat too much.
No, you're doing very well. But I know that this is a burning question on a lot of people's minds and lips, and people have voiced it before. But I just want to ask it straight out. Based on what you're saying about the ACE and all this type of stuff, do you think it's a knee-jerk reaction, Barbados?
Absolutely. There would not be this ferment if the woman Prime Minister of Barbados had not, in haste also, taken her country, Little England.
Yes, can you imagine?
Run away with Queen Elizabeth at the time she was the head of state. And of course, a woman did it. So the men are feeling castrated that a woman can do that and man can't do it. And so they are rushing. Of course, they have put a woman now in charge of the process.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's the best person to put in charge of it. I don't know how good a legal mind she is. I know she's a former judge, but she has never practiced law, as far as I know, at the bar. But and she has openly stated that people have to be prepared to give up some of their rights so that we can deal with crime. And indeed, the co-chair of the Constitution Committee, Lieutenant General Rocky Mead, has said the same thing, that if we want to deal with crime in Jamaica and murders and gunmanship, then people have to prepare to give up some of their rights. And these are the people that are in charge of constitutional reform. So red flags are going off, red flags are flying. Everybody is worried at what these two are going to drag us into. And so I think I have answered your question. I think it is a knee-jerk reaction to Barbados. But you see, Barbados was able to do what it did because it did not require a referendum. Their constitution that they negotiated allowed for the removal of the Queen by a certain majority of their house, upper and lower house.
House, yeah.
We in Jamaica, our constitution had a lot of safeguards written into it. One safeguard is that it must be 2/3 majority of both houses separately. So right now in the lower house, the JLP has more than a 2/3 majority. So they can be guaranteed that the lower house is going to pass it automatically. But the upper house, the way our constitution is, no one party can have a 2/3 majority automatically. One senator from the opposition has to disagree with the rest of his party colleagues and vote with the government. And that, what that has done, that has forced any serious constitutional motions to indeed have consensus, because both the PNP and the JLP have to agree before it can happen. And so that was not the arrangement that Barbados has. Mia Mottley's party alone was able to do what she has done. Jamaica is harder. And then on top of the 2/3 majority in both houses, on top of that, there has to be a referendum. Now, both parties are afraid of referendum because, as you know, they called a referendum for the federation, and the party, Manley, lost that referendum. And the fear is that they might lose this one too. And I'm going to hear saying to you, gentlemen, and to your listeners and viewers, that they are going to lose it if they carry on the way they're carrying on. If they do it in secret and they try and ram through this thing in haste, I and other people, we are going to come out publicly and tell people to vote no. And I think they will lose it.
Yeah, Peter, just a quick question though. You know, you had addressed part of it though, but I still want to ask a question. What should we expect in the transitory period if this should take place?
There's no transitory period. The present constitution operates, and until a new constitution is in force, the present one continues. And it will take a fraction of a second to switch from one to the other. So there really is no transition period at all. We have the present constitution where we call the Prime Minister the Most Honorable, and we call the Governor General Right Honorable, and we call the mayors Your Worship. All of this, of course, is part of the monarchy, you know, which is part of what I am going to say with you when you give me the chance.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Changing from the monarchy to a president, to a republic, is not just a matter of getting rid of King Charles or whoever it is. There's a whole way of thinking that is a monarchical mindset that we have to deal with. I mean, over there in the United States where you are, I don't know if you remember an old TV series called The Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh, yes.
Where according to that TV series, Jed Clampett goes into his backyard and he shoots after some animal, and all of a sudden oil come out of the ground. And all of a sudden the man is a millionaire. Why is that? Because the oil found on his property belongs to him.
Yes.
But in a monarchy like Jamaica, any oil that is found belongs to the monarch, to the queen, to the crown.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it happens to be on my land, I get nothing out of it. That's monarchy, you know, that's monarchical thinking.
Yeah.
And so if I happen to live in the cockpit country and bauxite is found underneath my yard, I have to move. And I don't get any benefit from that bauxite. Whereas in your country, in the United States, if bauxite was found under my land, it's mine. But a monarchical mindset says everything belongs to the crown. Pardon me, a telephone call coming in. If you would, I will just mute myself. and let me take the call. And I'm not taking it. I'm just telling them I'll call back.
Yeah, man, no problem. Go ahead.
Sorry, it was an important business call.
Yeah, man, no problem.
What I'm saying is that there are all sorts of implications of doing away with the monarchy. We have to ditch the monarchical way of thinking. I mean, think of it. We didn't refer to Barack Obama as the most honorable Barack Obama. We don't do that in a republic. The president is a citizen just like everybody else. You don't call him honorable or anything like that. Whereas in the monarchy, you have to have all kind of titles like Your Highness and your worship and your honor and your all of this. You have to ditch all of that when you're going to a monarchy. In our monarchical system here in Jamaica, every minister of government is a monarch. If the fisheries authority issues a fishing license, the minister responsible for fishing can overturn that license without appeal. Or if any appeal is made, the appeal is to the minister because the minister is a little monarch. They don't do that in a republic. In a republic, it's the court that has the final say in matters like this. But in a monarchical system, it's the monarch. That's what king means. That's what emperor means. And I'll go far as to say that constitutional reform, for us, one of the first things it means is what is called separation of powers. As you know, government, there are three branches of government. There's the executive branch. There's a legislative branch that passes laws. And then there is the judicial branch that interprets the law. And in a democracy, in a true democracy, in a republic, you have to have separation of powers. These three branches of government must be separate. But in Jamaica, they're not separate, as you know. Members of the legislature form the cabinet. So the very Minister of Constitutional Reform is an MP in St. James. The Minister of Education is an MP in St. Andrew. The Minister of Health is an MP also in St. Andrew. And of course, the Prime Minister is also an MP in St. Andrew. So that there you have an alliance between, or a connection between the legislature and the executive. The only genuinely independent branch of government is the judiciary. But the Chief Justice is appointed by the Prime Minister, or rather is appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister, not on the advice of the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. So the Prime Minister has the sole power to nominate the Chief Justice. And this is one of the points, I plan to make during our short chat today, is that the Prime Minister of Jamaica, in one sense, is more powerful than the President of the United States.
Yep.
Because the President of the United States cannot nominate the Chief Justice, cannot appoint the Chief Justice like that. You can nominate, and then it has to go through a process of confirmation and all of that, but not in Jamaica. The Prime Minister just says to the Governor General, appoint so and so, and that's it.
Yeah. As we are with the courts now, do you think that we should straighten out the court matters before we move to the reform?
What do you mean by court? You mean the Caribbean Court of Justice? What do you mean when you say
Vis-a-vis the Privy Council, yes.
Privy Council? Well, here is the thing now. The Privy Council is Her Majesty's Privy Council.
Right.
So once you are a monarchy, then available to you is Her Majesty's, or in this case now His Majesty's Privy Council. And usually, again, the monarch is the final court of appeal. But the monarch personally does not do any judging. The monarch passes on that to his or her Privy Council. Again, as I said before, we don't appoint the Privy Council in England. The Privy Council is appointed by the Queen or the King, which many people see as an advantage because it means that they don't have any conflict of interest locally. Our Chief Justice, as I've said before, is appointed by the Prime Minister. So the Chief Justice is the Prime Minister's Chief Justice. And you will recall that this Prime Minister, when he appointed the present Chief Justice, appointed him, you remember how that fiasco went? Appointed him on a temporary basis, on a trial basis to see
yes.
And if he liked how he performed, he would go, what kind of nonsense is that? That shows that there really is no separation of powers. That the Prime Minister is one. Now, as far as the Caribbean Court of Justice is concerned, it's the same thing, you know. Normally, the justices in the Caribbean Court are appointed by a Caribbean Judicial Services Commission, which has representatives from many different people on it. But the Chief Justice of the Caribbean Court is appointed by a small committee of prime ministers only. It does not go through the Regional Judicial Services Commission. So in the same way the Jamaican Chief Justice is appointed by the Prime Minister, the Caribbean Chief Justice is appointed by, I think it's 3 prime ministers. Now, I am not in favor of that. As far as I'm concerned, that's a conflict of interest. We have to find a way to appoint our final court of appeal in an independent manner. Now, here's another word that, you remember I said that this is a war of words?
Yes.
Said that 3 words that we don't agree on are democracy, consultation, and what was the third one I said? Consensus.
You're right.
But here's another one. Independent. What does that mean? Independent is supposed to mean that no politician has anything to say about it. But it's my understanding that when our politicians say independent, what they mean is that both the PNP and the JLP agree on something. So they say that's independent. But that's not independent. Independent could be that somebody gets named that neither of them like. But that will never happen under the present system. Under the present system, the 2 of them agree on who it is, and then they say it's an independent appointment. Whereas the Governor General's appointment nowadays is not appointment, is not independent, because, again, the Prime Minister appoints the Governor General. To the Queen, tells the Queen, appoint this man or this woman as Governor General. And nobody, you nor I, nor anybody, opposition, anybody, has any say about it. So that's the monarchy. That's how the monarchy operates. We still have a Caribbean Court of Justice that operates in a monarchical way. Now, you say you want us to settle it. Well, which comes first? Deciding what monarchical means, having a Court of Justice that is local but appointed in a monarchical way. I mean, we are really badly monarchical, you know. We are deeply, mentally, Bob Marley, quoting somebody else, talking about mental slavery. We are deeply monarchical in Jamaica. And I don't know how we are going to resolve the question of the court. Because the present Caribbean Court is a monarchical institution. The Chief Justice is appointed by the Prime Minister, this small committee of Prime Minister. I don't think that that is right. separation of powers means there has to be some independent way, separate and away from the politicians, to appoint the justices. And we don't have such a mechanism. We don't know what that means. Also, we don't have any way to recall a non-performing minister. Remember, I was saying to you that the Prime Minister of Jamaica has more power than the US President.
Yeah.
The US President can't call the election. The election date is set in the US.
Yep.
First Monday of November, that's it. If there was an earthquake, maybe it could be put off, but the President of the United States has no say in the date of that election. In Jamaica's election, the Prime Minister of Jamaica can wait to call it when it suits him, when he thinks he will win. And if he doesn't think he will win, he's not going to call it until the very last minute.
Yep.
And we saw what has happened. If something happens, like the Grenada invasion, for example, and everybody feels wonderful, Siaga just call the election because he felt he would win. 2 years before it was due, he called the election. The US President can't do that. So our monarchical system in Jamaica is really very profound. Will the Prime Minister give up that power to call election? No, because he wants to remain a monarch. There are other ways that the Prime Minister is a monarch, that he has great power. I've given two already. The business of naming the Chief Justice, the business of naming the Governor General, that's two. The third one is this calling of general election. I'm looking at my notes. The Prime Minister can name anybody, any MP as his cabinet, in his cabinet. But here's the problem with that. Suppose the cabinet, the MP list of them doesn't have good managers in it. The Prime Minister is forced to pick one of them, you know. In the United States, your president can pick the best businessman to be his chief education or whatever, or health or whatever, housing, whatever. We can't do that. He appoints somebody to the Senate. That's the other power the Prime Minister has. He can just write a letter and say, I appoint so-and-so to the Senate, and they're in the Senate. That's not how it works in the US. In the US, you have to have a Senate hearing, confirmation hearing. Well, people in your country are elected to the Senate. Yes. In Jamaica, the Senate is appointed by the Prime Minister on the one hand, and the leader of the opposition on the other. This is monarchical thinking. And I fear that what we are going to swap is a white king for a black president, king, white monarch for a black monarch. That we really will not do away with the monarchy. We will just don't call the monarch the King of England anymore. We'll call him the President of Jamaica. But it's the same thing, monarch.
And if you look at republic, I don't think a lot of people understand what the republic that we are looking at means. And should we move to the real, what I call the real republic, as opposed to being a republic of the Commonwealth?
Well, republic in the Commonwealth or republic out of the Commonwealth, that is, it will be the same problem because Jamaicans don't know what either one means.
Right.
We have long said that there has to be an extensive public education campaign to explain to our people what a republic means. But here the Minister of Legal Reform says she's going to table the bill in Parliament next month. This is April and it's May. What amount of public education is going to take place between April and May? And they say they're going to have consultation. When they have consultation, you know what that means? They have a meeting and say, this is what we are going to do. And they call that consultation. That's not consultation. That is dictatorship telling us what they are going to do. And if we say, well, we don't like this, it makes no difference. So whether we stay in the Commonwealth or not is neither here nor there. The fact is that Jamaicans on the street do not understand what the monarchy is, because we're born in it and growing it. Neither do we. It comes like normal and natural to call a minister honorable minister. But that is not republic thinking. We don't know what republic thinking is because we've grown up in the monarchy. That's all we know. To stop calling them honorable minister is a first step towards a republic. But they don't want that. The minister still wants to be called honorable. The honorable house. I mean, but yes, I quite agree with you. Nobody understands it. It will require, I would say, at least a year of public education. I think that this whole constitutional thing is going to be an embarrassment because it's not going to succeed. If it goes to referendum like this, the government will lose. Bruce Golding said something yesterday in public. He said that the news that has come out of this committee, which has met 6 times, as far as he's concerned, has not come up with anything new other than what came up 40 years ago when this matter was discussed. That the committee has had 6 meetings and has not advanced the discussion one bit. That basically, it is a rush through thing. And I'm glad that you all who have the ear of the diaspora in the United States is keeping your ear to the ground here in Jamaica to find out what is going on. Your listeners need to know that this process of constitutional reform is being mismanaged, mishandled by the government at present.
And that is not good at all, because we don't want to go back where we're coming from.
Nor do we want to stand still. But
yeah, right. Yeah. What we need, like I say, should have happened from 66 to 1. We need a new constitution that is developed by us, not a patch up something from somewhere else. And we patch it up or take. Go ahead.
Remember somebody called Wilmot Perkins? I don't know if you're too young to remember Wilmot Perkins.
No, man.
I'm teasing you. When Mutty was on the air in the 70s and the 80s, constitutional reform talk was in the air.
Oh, yes.
But every day, constitutional reform, separation of powers, fixed election date. Are we going to have proportional representation or first past the post? Are we going to have local government enshrined in the Constitution, or you have a separate thing? We have not moved. All of that discussion took place and nothing happened. And we're going today now to do it again. And we're starting from scratch. So we haven't made any progress. I grew up in the 70s and 80s talking about constitutional reform, and nothing came of it. And nothing happened in the 60s, as you say. Buster and Manley went to Lancaster House or wherever they went to in London and had a private discussion about the Constitution. And since then, a lot of talk on the airwaves, and nothing has happened. I don't see anything coming out of this. As you say, they are reacting to Mia Mottley, and they're going about it with indecent haste. It's going to, I'm afraid, fritter away the possibilities.
Do you know who is funding this exercise?
No, nothing has been said. The assumption is that being funded out of the public purse, unless you have some evidence that some behind the scenes people are funding it. I have no evidence of that.
No, I don't either. But the idea of this gentleman that some people want to remove, and it don't look like that will happen.
Well,
You know?
the government decided who they wanted to put on the committee. You remember how that went? They
Oh, yes.
named everybody on the committee, except the opposition members, and the opposition said they're not naming anybody. So it's obvious at first, it's obvious that the rest of the members were not after consultation with the opposition. The government did it on their own, including this gentleman. And then eventually the opposition named its 2 members, and then the committee was able to meet. So there's no consensus even about who is on the committee. And when you start off with, as you know, all the time people say, what gone by the morning?
Can't come good evening.
I would say gone by the morning already. But this gentleman may be a constitutional expert, but they say he's pro-gay, pro-abortion.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the only one on that committee that is pro-gay and pro-abortion. They've named a woman who is. But you know what bothers me about that committee is they said, so-and-so is here representing the church. No, maybe this is another word problem. How can you represent somebody and the person them never send you? They named somebody to represent the church who, as far as the churches are concerned, can't represent them at all. But the government says this reverend is going to represent the church. No, is the person really representing the church, or are they representing the government? Government named them to represent the church. But as I said before, and then they name somebody else to represent youth, and they name somebody to represent NGOs, and they name somebody to represent unions, and they're not representing them, it's the government they're representing. Yes, go ahead. Sorry about that. So you say you're going to develop a constitution, and you form a committee, and you say you put somebody on the committee that represents the church, and they don't represent the church. What are you saying? You don't even know what the word represent means? It's another word about which there is no agreement. You must say to the church, name somebody that you wish to represent you. You can't decide who will represent the church. That is not represent. So, as I say, it gone by the morning. And I know that the diaspora is very interested in this discussion, and I thank you for asking me, humble little me, to share my thoughts. But I think it's going to be a struggle, a long uphill struggle for this government to table something next month. And if they table it next month, they can pass it in Parliament. You know, they have the 2/3 majority.
Oh yes, oh yes.
They can't get it passed in the Senate. And then they said they're going to have a referendum. So let me ask you a question. A referendum now is going to say yes or no. Yes or no to what? To a document. But the document will have a lot of things in it. The document may have 20 things in it. And I might like 19 of them, and there's one that I don't like. Now you're forcing me to say yes or no. So if I say yes, I am saying yes to the 19 things that I like and the one thing I don't like. Now I might decide that that one thing I don't like is so important that I'm going to say no. Instead, what the government should be doing is asking 20 questions. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Then I will vote yes for the 19, and then I will vote no for the 20th one that I don't agree with. You understand what I'm saying?
Definitely, yes.
But that's not how they're going to do it. They're going to put the whole long list of things and say yes or no. And people like me are going to say no. because I'm not going to vote for something I don't want. So the way that they're going about it, brothers and sisters who are listening, could very well be the end of the defeat of the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether I'm being too negative. Am I too negative?
No, you're
You're
on the
being
button.
pragmatic and realistic, you know.
Yeah.
I want the thing to work, you know. I want a change. I want a new constitution.
Well, I wanted that
But,
from I was born, because
okay.
I know, say, what we have, I mean, is not ours. We did not create it.
No.
That is my
I
problem.
was visiting my family in Canada when Canada repatriated their constitution. Because like us, the Canadian Constitution was an order in council. The Canadian Constitution, when it was first created, was an act of the British House of Parliament.
Yeah.
And the Canadian Parliament said, our Constitution must be an act of the Canadian Parliament. And they voted, I don't remember what year it was, but I happened to be visiting my brother and sister at the time. Now, they say they want to do the same thing here. They want to repatriate the Jamaican Constitution. Jamaica's Constitution is not an act of the Jamaican Parliament. The Jamaican 1962 Constitution is an act of the British Parliament. It's an order in council.
Yes.
So they want to change it to being an act of the Jamaican Parliament, which is a wonderful idea, but you need a referendum for that. And that means we have to vote again, yes or no. That means you're going to vote for these tremendous powers of the Prime Minister to act like a monarch. I'm not going to vote for that. I don't want the Prime Minister to be able to appoint the Chief Justice. I don't want that. I don't want the Prime Minister to be able to call an election when he feels it suits him. I'm not going to vote yes for that.
And in the same way, as you say, we're not losing the monarchy or that idea, because the Prime Minister is going to appoint the President also.
We are changing the monarch from King Charles to possibly King Andrew.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that is sad. That is not going in the right direction at all.
Anyway, let me say that it's early days yet. I heard in the news this morning here in Jamaica that they put it to the minister yesterday that the deliberations of the Constitutional Committee should be public. She said she would give it some thought. But she did reiterate that they plan to submit the bill to Parliament next month. If that happens, we're dead in the water.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Early days yet, it could be that the government will relent. Because basically, you know, they're looking to the next election.
Yes, yes. Very obvious.
In a certain time, and they know when that is. And that is why, and it takes, they want the first reading of the bill to be done before that election, so they can claim, we are against the monarchy.
Yes.
But I'm afraid that, and they want to have the referendum at the same time as the election. It's ill-conceived. Let's do it slowly and let's do it properly.
Well, I personally have a lot of ideas about what we need to change. And there's a lot to be changed. And if they rush it, I fear that there won't be any changes.
Can I ask you, my brother? My church, the institution that I work for, St. Michael's College, we are hosting a public forum at the end of this month in conjunction with the Advocates Network to invite a group, many groups to come to present their suggestions for constitutional reform.
Okay.
This is what the committee should be doing, which they are not doing. But my college, that where I am the dean, we are having such a meeting at the end of this month.
Okay.
And we want to get as much input as possible from anyone with ideas. So my brother, I would appreciate if you would put pen to paper, or nowadays I guess it's finger to keyboard, and write down your ideas, send them to me under your name, and I undertake to present them to the meeting on your behalf.
I definitely will do that. Yes. I have some very strong ideas.
I look forward to them, so thank you.
Yes, sir, definitely. Definitely. And it's a wonderful eye-opener this morning, Yes. Because one of the major problems we have is that people don't know and they don't understand. They just hear some words, republic, yes. Get rid of the queen, now the king.
For them to understand, will it take months before people understand?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Can I thank you for having me on your program? It is a busy day for me, and I have someone coming to me in about 15 minutes.
Sure, yeah, man. This has been wonderful. This has been wonderful. So we thank you very much.
Please invite me back again.
Oh yes.
Some new developments will be next week or two.
Oh, definitely.
Which requires update for your listeners.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
I am happy. Any future invitation you may extend.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the offer. Courtney?
Yes. Thank you very much, Reverend Peter Espeut, for being with us on the Real Stuff podcast. It was a pleasure having you. Well, the discussion was really inspiring and eye-opening too. So we thank you so much. Back to you, Flavors.
Yes, sir. So we will get back to you earliest, and looking forward to see you again as this develops. Thank you very much.
I know.
You lead us to full. You belong far away away. Ajuguala leva buseru. Lida mua, lida sungfula. Lida mua, lida sungfula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer so rough. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me know I said me if it could flee. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi hide like a thief in the night. Me I fi get out of sight. Me I fi take away myself. I fi take away myself. I fi utilize